sounds from the rhythm underground. Welcome to the We Love Guitar Nerds podcast, your place for all things guitar. We have your interviews, we have your lessons, your boomer discussions, and your verbal rabble-rousings. So please hit subscribe, share, and like to join our constantly growing musical community. We Love Guitar Nerds welcomes Chris Sheridan. Chris does not remember me from way back in the day. We were together in a room at Swizzles in York, Pennsylvania in the mid-'80s.
Swizzles. That's the name of the club. Damn.
We were together. The first time, and I told Joey this, the first time I ever heard Fox on the Run was from a Dallas via Columbus band called Sweet Savage. To everybody in York, Pennsylvania in 1985, 86, whatever it was.
I think it was 86, yeah.
Yeah. You guys were you had made it to what we saw.
Well, we thought we were on our way for sure. Yeah.
You had your stuff together. Thank you for being part of this. Thank you. We want to get your story, the whole story. You got lots of stories.
Well, Swizzles in York, Pennsylvania there's a story there.
Yeah. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
So it's like, so I remember, like up until a couple of years ago, I still had a pic of your brother's bass pick, the hot
right.
Yeah, kind of like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back to your earliest musical life. Like, what were your earliest musical memories?
I was about 5 or 6, and we got a piano. I guess it was my mom's old piano when she was a little girl, and it showed up at our house, and she played and sang like "You Are My Sunshine" or something, a couple standards like that. And I couldn't believe it. I hadn't really known anybody that could. I thought it was just people on TV. So here's somebody, my mom, that could. She sat down and played and sang, and it just blew me away. Then I would end up taking piano lessons, which I hated, didn't like it at all, because you had to practice, and there was a teacher and notes and all this stuff.
The little old lady piano teacher type?
Yeah. And she didn't like smack my knuckles with a ruler or anything like that when I made a mistake, but it wasn't fun, you know what I mean? It was just kind of boring, and the practicing, and plus it wasn't really relevant. I just wanted to play songs. I didn't really want to do all the scales, but I'm glad I did it. And I think it was during that time I saw my first concert, which was Duke Ellington and his orchestra. He would have been old then. This would have been late 60s, early 70s.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it. Here's this guy, and he's, hooping and hollering, and then people are out in the aisles just jumping up and down, and it's,
you probably had You had no idea how big of a deal he was.
I was just like, amazed by it. But then, like in junior high and high school, I was in marching band because I really liked the performance part of it. So it would be parades and, of course, all the football games. There was something more to it than just, you're with other people. I like the band thing. That's one thing solo piano doesn't really have it's not really a band. It's not a band at all. So it was, I like doing that, working together. My brother Laine was in the drum section, the percussion section of the marching band.
All right.
Plus we had co-ed buses, and, you're traveling 2 or 3 hours to a football game on a late night on a Friday. And there was alcohol involved and girls involved. And I was like, I kind of got, for being high school.
Socialization.
Yeah. I was like, oh, okay, this is going all right. And Joey and I, Joey C. Jones and I, we skateboarded together, Laine too.
Yeah.
It was mainly just, I was probably 12 or 13. He would have been like 15, 16. But we would always listen to rock music. It would be like AC/DC, old AC/DC, Aerosmith, even Rush, we're playing Hemispheres while we're skateboarding at the ramp. And it was just such a rich part of the Nugent was going on. The thing, and at one point we just sort of realized, okay, we're not going to go anywhere from southeastern Ohio being skateboarders. We weren't that good, but we loved rock music and we like hanging out together. And it just sort of came like, my brother and I were musicians. It's like, well, let's play rock and roll. So as it worked out, I played guitar. Laine played bass. He wasn't one of those bass players that started out as a guitar player, and there were too many guitar players,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
well, I'll just play bass. He started out wanting to play bass, got a bass, never learned how to play guitar. Just he was strict bass player. He got a Rickenbacker, so like Geddy Lee.
yeah.
Rush played our high school in '78,
Okay.
of all things. So we kind of slipped into it, or I don't know, got mushed into it that way.
Yeah, yeah,
But it made sense going to concerts, and Kiss, being Kiss fans, and that whole thing. And yeah, so we just started playing in high school.
yeah. So I remember Joey saying, you guys, was it Laine and Joey had a thing where they were covering a Rush tune or something like that?
Yeah, they had, and they would do crazy stuff too. Like, they do part of like 2112.
Yeah,
It wasn't just, the standard was,
musician nerd kind of
yeah, like Out on the Tiles by Zeppelin,
right.
this, kind of really deeper cuts, but more musician. And the guitar player they had, this guy, Brett Bodine, amazing musician. He was like classically trained, had a perfect ear. You could come home from school and a new record would come out that day. I remember Number of the Beast when that came out. I put it on for him, and he put his guitar on. He tuned while he was listening to Number of the Beast the first time, and he didn't even finish the song. About 2/3 of the way through, he put the needle back on at the beginning and played it note for note along
Yeah.
with it. It just completely blew me away. So
Was
they
he
had
the one that taught you?
yeah, and he would definitely show me some stuff, and I benefited from, it's easier when you see somebody up close doing what they're doing. You can, listen to a rock star, some virtuoso musician, and it just seems like so far away. But if it's a guy you go to high school with and you're sitting in a room with him, it's like, wow, he can actually do that. It's possible. It might be possible for me.
When did you start playing guitar?
16.
Okay.
It was
Yeah, that's
16.
amazing.
I kind of dabbled around a little bit. I had like a Sears guitar, but it didn't play very well, and I didn't like the way it looked. So I ended up taking the neck off, and I cut a BC Rich bitch looking body out of pine or something horrible for a guitar. But it was more of a hobby thing. But I think by the time I was 16, that's when I got a real good Les Paul copy. I think I paid $150 for it, which was pretty big money then. And then I didn't really play with Laine and Joey in high school because they had this guy Brett and some other people playing. But I was always there at the rehearsals and the gigs, and I got to jam a little. Yeah, little brother. Yeah, 2 years is a huge gap when you're 16 and the other guy's 14. It's
Mine
like,
was
oh my God, this little kid.
Mine was 5 years older. We never spoke.
Yeah, I know. It's just like you're in a different planet.
Yeah.
Or something. But then we moved from Athens to Columbus afterwards.
Why did you do that?
Well, Athens is a pretty small town, and Columbus, it was amazing. In early '80s, there were probably 4 clubs that held at least 800 people, and they packed out every weekend. And there were a few bands. This was sort of in the post-Gods era. Eric Moore was still kind of doing something, some sort of Gods thing. But Mark Chatfield, the guitar player, who of course from Rosie. And Rosie was the band that we would go. Joey and Laine were already there. I was still in Athens in high school, and every time Joey got a new driver's license, he'd always give me his old one, and it worked great as a fake ID. So here I am, 17. I'm driving up to the Alrosa Villa to see Rosie on a school night, usually like a Sunday night or something like that. And of course, I have to drive back. And again, like I was saying about Brett, Rosie, they're so professional, so honed. A lot of the stuff you don't even notice. Although you subconsciously you notice, like all the roadies wore black T-shirts, and there was a scrim under the drummerizer, and the guitar changes were just perfect. But if you go see a professional band or arena band, that stuff is really hard to see because they're so slick. But when you're in a club, you can actually go, oh, well, that's what he's doing. So we really learned a lot of our professionalism, and like you don't go out and hang out with your buddies in the bar before you go on. Maybe after the first set, but not before. But you keep that mystique. You show up as a band, go in the back door, and we were able to then, once we moved to Texas to start Sweet Savage, we came out of the blocks, with all that stuff, and people were like, "How are they doing this in the bar?"
What just happened? You're all underage and you're already like.
Yeah, we were honed and seasoned by our first gig, kind of individually, but coming together, and we had all that stuff. And we would tell the other guys like, no, don't do that, don't do this, no, put a black t-shirt on,
Yeah.
and don't just stand out there, like, oh, hang them back there, we are leaning up against the amp or something. It's like, kind of go off to the side, your road crew.
Yeah.
All the guitar changes, I saw how Chatfield would do it,
Mm-hmm.
where you hit standby and pull the plug out and stick it in your mouth, the guitar cord. Then when you go up and over, and hand it to the crew guy and you get the other one, it's already threaded through. So you just pick it out of your mouth and stick it in the cord, and it's already threaded underneath your strap. So
This is
little
what you
things
learned
like
at the
that.
El Rosa Villa
Yeah.
when with Rosie.
Yeah. That's how I learned a lot of that stuff, was watching those guys. They were my
And
mentors.
Joey worked there at the time, did he not?
He did. Actually, he worked there right before he moved to Texas. I'll back up a little bit. Laine moved to Texas first. I went down to see him a couple of times, and I was blown away by the music scene there. It was even better than Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
More places to play, more bands, a lot of really good musicians, and a lot of girls like in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't seen that before. And there's other reasons, but rock and roll was the main one. And then I ended up moving down there. And we were talking to different people, and like, who are we going to get for a singer? What are we going to do for a drummer? We were just going to maybe be a guitar player, bass player unit that would maybe try to join an established band or something existing. And I'm saying, well, what about Joey? And Laine probably hadn't seen Joey sing in a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, well, geez, I don't know. I mean, has he improved? And I said, well, yeah, I've been, in Columbus, I've been watching him. And so we went back up there. I think it was like New Year's Eve or something, 83 going into 84. And Joey was in the opening band. I forget, maybe it was Rosie. I forget who the headline, but and then as soon as he was done, he went out there and waited tables for the rest of the night, which, is kind of weird, but, but it's rock and roll too. I mean, you got to, pay the bills and, be doing whatever it takes to, to get yourself out there. And I was right. And Laine, told me that I was right, that Joey really had it together. He had, really improved. And I mean, it was good to begin with, but he got that extra level of good to where you're oh, okay. And we were like, oh yeah, no brainer, come on down. And he wanted to do it. And he came down in the spring. We started rehearsing, looking for drummers, and really got it together. But by then, it was 84. Laine and Joey had been playing together for, on and off for several years. So it wasn't new, really. And plus we all knew each other. And we knew, seeing Rosie and some of these other things.
You all grew up together. You have the same cultural reference points.
Well, we do. And, it was funny later, much later, this would have been maybe just even 10 or 15 years ago, I ran into Eric Singer. We had played with Badlands in LA at some point. And we, run into each other now and then, but I saw him years later at a party. And this is after, he'd been in Cooper and been in Kiss for probably 10 years. And I said, wow, that's great playing in Kiss and everything, kind of a childhood dream, and he goes, yeah, it's cool, but I'll never have what you guys had. And I go, what's that? And he said, you and your brother and Joey grew up together. You went to concerts together. You got drunk for the first time together. You're getting laid, all these driver's license, all these rites of passage. And this is that time frame when
it's the cultural reference points. Yes.
And it's the adolescent,
your best
wet dream of rock and roll. And those songs are, kind of written about that kind of attitude, shout it out loud and everything. And so we lived that. We, learned how to play rock and roll together. We wrote, we learned how to write, we learned how to do everything in that context of going through those rites of passage together. So
you pulled each other up.
Yeah, we definitely did. We were like a unit, a band unit, even before we played our first gig. So it helped so much. I mean, it made all the difference.
So where was the first Sweet Savage gig?
It was at a dive bar called Matley's Phase 2 in Dallas. And it was, I mean, you put 350, 400 people in there, and they're calling the fire department. Stage was probably, 8 inches off the ground. So it was just a nothing corner stage. And we packed it in there. I think we sold out. We were set an attendance record, I think, our first weekend, because there was a little bit of hype. There was this band called Black Star that was playing around town, and we would sit in with them. Pantera was playing. I remember the first time I saw them early in '84.
They were kind of like a hair metal band back then.
Well, they were for sure. I mean,
More of a Van Halen-y.
Yeah,
More than what
Lion T,
yeah.
maybe some Scorpions, but it was really kind of, well, that's at a time when guitar rock was almost top 40. Some of the Crew and Quiet Riot, and they were very
like the Scorpions.
Yeah, it was mainstream music. You were kind of playing top 40 hits, playing rock and roll.
Yeah.
So we had, for maybe the first year or so, we had very similar, in a sense, set lists. But I remember the first time I saw them, and it was like, I think I was Vinny's age. We're the same age, and then Daryl's 2 years younger than me. So I was underage. So Daryl was, way underage. And I'd heard about him. I had heard he had recently won a guitar contest, and he got a Dean and some Randall amps out of it. And I was blown away. It's one of those things you just know. Now, the band wasn't polished. They weren't, but they were tight. Musically, they were tight.
Yeah.
But the clothes and the stage show and stuff like that, we had obviously put a lot more emphasis on that.
Yeah.
And honed that in. But you could just tell. I mean, he played great, but you could also tell that there was something more. There's something beyond that. Not just a guy shredding.
He hadn't reached a spot yet. So.
But you could sense that rarefied air that there was something very special about him and his playing. And we got to be friends. We got to hang out, and we would sit in with each other, depending on who had the week off. There was another club in Fort Worth called Savvy's, which is a little bit closer to where they lived in Arlington. We were more in North Dallas, and so we, I got to jam on stage with those guys. Of course, not when Daryl played. I'd go out front and watch when Dime was playing. And I could see the rest of the band, and he's playing my guitar, and I'm like, it's the closest I got to seeing Sweet Savage. But playing with Vinny, he's just a great drummer, super tight, and they were super nice guys. I mean, they they never really got wrapped up in the ego thing, even years later when they were hugely successful. But I remember the time Daryl came up to me at I guess it was at Savvy's, and we were playing, and it might have been '85, late '85 or something. He goes, "Man, we're gonna do it." I said, "What are you gonna do?" He said, "Well, we're going metal." And because there was a time where bands were actually deciding if they were going to be this top 40-ish, heavy guitar rock Crew, those bands. Or, then Metallica had come out, and Megadeth, and they were starting to get, so it was still a little underground then. But it was a conscious decision that they made, and they switched singers. They got rid of Terry and got Phil. And then he goes, "Yeah, man, we're doing," and they went metal, and they did not look back, and it was a perfect fit for them. And after that, it was really great, because there was really no not that there was a competition, but we were playing such different set lists and music and different appeal that
were they covering metal?
First time when they did when they went metal, the first time I saw them with Phil, they did like an Anthrax cover. And then the last time I saw Pantera at it was a Palladium in Hollywood, Anthrax opened up for him. So
and Daryl played on probably 3 Anthrax albums or something like that.
But they started out covering Anthrax
as a ghost lead guitar. But that's Manifestation.
It really was.
And
I got to shout it out to Daryl for Dime. I guess I just called him Daryl, but I think single-handedly kept the shredder guitar god, virtuoso guitarist musician element alive throughout the '90s, because there was nothing. All bands, they didn't even do a lead in their songs, and here was Dime just shredding it up, and they're selling tons of records and selling out concerts. And I got to hand it to him, because it was really kind of a dark time for shred guitar.
Everybody, if you played a solo, you were waiting tables.
Yeah, right.
You were. So Sweet Savage started out having, you were mostly a rhythm guitar player.
Right. And I was on stage right with my brother. So Now would do a couple leads and
Mhm.
everything, but we had this guitar player, Michael Scott, initially, who my brother had known for a while. I guess when he first moved to Texas, he met him, and he was in this band Black Star, who they were kind of the drawing band in the area at the time, and so he jumped ship and came over to us. It was only the band maybe 6 months or so, and we got another guy, Lance Ross, kind of a Randy Rhoads. When everyone was kind of doing Eddie Van Halen, he was a
Randy
little
Rhoads.
more Randy Rhoads-ish,
Mhm.
and in a really good way. Very melodic solos that are very well thought out. We all had Jacksons, and we're doing all this thing, and he was in the band for I think almost a year. We did our first LA trip. He went with us, and we did a 5-song demo that we all played on, and a really nice guy, really good guitar player. We were just kind of a steamroller that wasn't going to stop,
Yeah.
and we weren't hanging around locally too much. We were always on the road, or always doing this, and for whatever reason, it wasn't. It ended up not being as good a fit for him.
Yeah.
There was never any falling out. There was never really anything wrong. It was just an evolution. And Joey and Randy, our drummer, were like, what do we do?
So
We
you
got to
talk
get.
about Randy. We don't want to
Yeah,
forget Randy.
yeah, yeah. Well, just to finish this, when Lance left, my brother's like, I think Chris can do it. I think Chris can take over not only the leads, but the only guitar players. So we went from 2 guitar players to 1. And the other guys were like, I don't know, maybe we got to get somebody else. And he goes, no, he's got this, and it ended up working out. But yeah, Randy St. John, it was the only drummer we had like starting out as Sweet Savage in Texas. I guess probably some girls that we knew said, oh, you got to check out this guy. And I think we saw his band play. And I mean, he's like 6'4", and he's just a heavy hitter. And he's got this, all this hair and his big drum kit and double kick, and twirling the sticks, and, big cymbals. And it was just like, wow, great. It was just mega. And it worked out right away. I mean, we didn't really have to work anything out. It's just like, well, let's just start playing and learn the tunes and get out there.
Well, you guys started out playing a lot of covers.
Yeah, well, we only had a couple originals. I think Head Over Heel, or On the Rocks was our first original.
Yeah.
There were a couple other ones. Condition Red was a little more double guitar lead oriented, double kick. It was a little more in that, a little heavier, a little faster. Yeah, Head Over Heels, and actually Michael Scott wrote this song called "You're Gonna Lose That Girl," which was very Beatles-esque. So it was, we're still doing the melodic rock, but there was, with Lance, I think we were a little bit heavier. So because we were covering, Dio and Gary Moore, and a lot
like,
of other.
Am I remembering this correct? Like Bark at the Moon. Did you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that from Swizzles.
Yeah.
Because you weren't you would by the time I saw you, I saw nothing of this guy who couldn't do it.
Right.
Yeah, you had already.
Yeah, we'd made that transition, and as time went on, like in the first couple of years, we just phased out covers and replaced them with originals as we wrote. So,
Yes.
by at some point we were just, if we had to do 2 sets, yeah, we'd have to do some covers, but it was really the smaller part of the set, and then we could just do whatever we wanted, do Sin City, or Touch Too Much, or because Joey was so great at doing AC/DC. Yeah, well, we ended up really making that one of our songs as well. We recorded it, but yeah, we had quite the set list. I mean, looking back, there's some old video footage. We're doing like Drop Dead Legs from 1984, and like even weird stuff like Loving You Sunday Morning from Scorpions, which I don't think anybody's ever covered that. I don't even think Scorpions plays that song. Yeah. Yeah, Y&T, Mean Street.
So you guys had management. You all over the United States. You're heading out to the LA, Hollywood.
Well, we had based out of Houston, American Bands Management. This guy John Bloomstrom. He had the whole Cardies. There was a whole circuit. You could play in Houston, Austin, Dallas, El Paso, San Antonio. Beaumont. There was all these, and there again, it's the same, like 6 to 8, maybe 900 seat clubs, and you could get booked there. And you had to do 4 or 5 nights, and you had to do 2 sets. and everything. But the great thing about that and being on that circuit was you would never, it would be like a month or maybe 6 weeks before you would come back. So there was a little bit of anticipation. People, oh, you're back in town. But we never stopped. The next week, we were just in another town playing. But the great thing about it was when a national act would come through and they would play those clubs. Those were the clubs that a little less than 1,000 seat. So we, everyone from, Uli John Roth to Lita Ford, my gosh, Black Oak, Arkansas. I mean, there were just tons of bands. Either they were up and coming, like Autograph. They'd just gotten off the 1984 tour when they did their own club tour. And so if they were going to play on a Thursday at one of these clubs, and we were there Wednesday through Saturday, Thursday, we would just become the de facto opening band. And then we'd have the rest of the night off, except for the time when we played a show with Black Flag. That was that was a mistake. Really, that was a
war story you didn't tell me about.
No, yeah, well, this is at Cardi's in Houston. Great club, huge draw. We're so popular there, and we're like, oh my God, Black Flag, they're gonna kill us. I mean, we were like the opposite of, and this is Henry Rollins, and they're doing their thing, and we talked to the club, and we were like, this is gonna suck. So what they decided to do for safety reasons is we played, I think maybe even they played first. They just took the headlining spot and just did it. And then they cleared everybody out. And then they opened the doors again and reopened the box office so people would buy a Sweet Savage ticket to come in.
Yeah.
So that way the crowds, one was gone before the next one came in. It was a smart move, but a couple of the guys just bought a ticket and came to see us, not of the band, but a couple of guys in the Black Flag crowd, just to, flip us off in the front row or whatever they had to do. But there was no major altercation, but it was really a bizarre double bill.
So let's talk about the York and Swizzles. This is I still have the promo picture.
All right. Yeah. And that was the cut pictures that were on the EP.
Yes. You guys came up to York. Did you know the same guy who was booking you in Texas booked you to Pennsylvania?
Yeah, he did. He had there was somebody kind of centrally located there. I think it was like in, I don't know, Maryland. It's kind of where Maryland, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania kind of all come together.
Yeah.
There's some weird, they're skinny. The state's really skinny there.
Yeah.
So we did a number of things, but and then we kind of moved on. I think we ended up in Baltimore, but from that,
you ever play Hammerjacks?
No, we played the Sandbar or something. Sand Dune, some sand something.
Yep.
We wanted to play Hammerjacks, believe me, but we played this other place. So we're at York, and this, I think was.
When I saw you, nothing happened. I should preface it. I should preface it that nothing happened, but I think it was a couple of years. Whenever it happened, you tell your story. I don't want to.
Yeah. Well, so the club, it was a side stage, so it's kind of along the sidewall, a long club opposite the bar, and it was relatively low ceiling. And we had a bunch of lights. We had our own truck and our own lights, and that's also something that made our shows a little bit different because we brought in extra stuff. So even just the light show was more than your average band, or definitely more than the house lights. And so Randy, our light man, another Randy, hung them, but he hung them on the sprinkler system posts, the actual tubing that the water runs through, and didn't think anything of it, and I didn't either. I really didn't even notice. But like midway through like the second song, the lights had heated up, and they heated up the sensors, and man, the sprinklers come on, and at first I thought somebody threw a beer, which was bound to happen, and no big deal. But it kept coming. I'm like, what the hell is this? And the lights are popping because the water's hitting the hot lights. Mm-hmm. And then, my guitar stopped working. My tubes are exploding because the hot tubes and water dripping on them. And then I'm like, holy crap. And once I realized what's happening, I'm going to get shocked. And fortunately, my Marshall is one that had one of the plastic rocker switches. to turn the power on and off instead of the metal toggle switch. So I just kind of went back there and hit the standby and took my guitar off because I didn't want to go Ace Frehley anybody. And and it was just, I mean, you know, we're soaked and they turned the lights on and it finally they got the water to stop, but it was all our gear, so we couldn't play for the rest of the thing. So we lost money on that and this, but I think we ended up just going to Harrisburg and seeing was it the Metron, the Metro?
Metron, yeah.
Metron, yeah. And we saw Wrathchild.
That is funny you mentioned Wrathchild. Because
they were fun guys.
When you talk about bands that in the mid 80s they were deciding which way to go, because Wrathchild came from Brad Divins, who played on the Cool Kids, Kix' Cool Kids album.
Oh, okay.
He was the lead singer and guitar player and later bass player for Wrathchild. He was the brainchild behind Wrathchild. Shannon Larkin, who now plays with Godsmack, was in Wrathchild.
All right.
Okay. So they were at one time, are they a Kix-like band? Draws inspiration from AC/DC? Or are they a heavy metal band? Later on, they became more of a thrash band.
No, they weren't then. I remember that one song was a Danger You,
Danger Us, yes. Yeah, I still love that song.
Yeah, okay.
I love the
that would kind of work for either. It's metal, but it's also kind of just
regular. Yeah, but that was kind of Kix-ish. That was and, So So they had when you said that about Pantera, that's immediately who I thought about because they
did a similar thing, yeah.
Yeah. Yes, you went to Metron that night. Anything so what happened in York
well, the club was mad because they didn't have a band because we couldn't get tubes right away for the amps and everything. And we didn't get paid either. So everyone was upset pretty much. But, then you just get to the next gig and hopefully you get paid from that one and, pay the crew and put gas in the truck.
Yeah.
We were almost like migrant workers. We would just like go from club to club, city to city. And there were times when we would, just fudge our way to get, a deposit on the hotel and then go to the club that night, even before we played, and said, give us some money. And then by the end of the week, we had, again, gas and money to pay for the rooms.
It was that lean?
Well, there's sometimes it was month to month, or I mean, like week to week, gig to gig, because we put everything back into the band. I mean, we had a crew, so and the crew got paid sometimes when the band didn't, but it was the price we paid for the professionalism.
Yeah. And
also there was a time when I didn't even change my own strings. So it really felt like a rock star, but the guy was getting paid. So that was his job. And we had some good techs, Chris Lamarca, Jerry Dayton, really great guys. But one of the reasons behind that was that we wouldn't, as the band members, we wouldn't be burnt out or smash our fingers loading the truck.
Yeah.
And then we could focus 100% on the show.
No, it makes extra sense. So what I'm saying is Sweet Savage, you guys did it right. Like musicians don't know how to do it right. You know what I mean? When I say this, the performance end of it, you thought about all the stuff that are often forgotten. Yeah,
or just completely overlooked. Some people just, oh, really? Like, why would you do that? And you don't actually
see it like a business.
But on some level, even though regular audience goer is just going to know there's a little something, they might not be able to put their finger on it, but it's a combination of those things. And so that way the band was preserved for, all of our energy, all of our focus was on the stage for the shows. And, any extra money, if there was such a thing, well, we'd get the lights fixed or get new bulbs or a new engine for the truck. So even though money was coming in, a lot of times we didn't see it. The band paid for strings and picks too. So it was really a professional organization. And my brother Laine really ran the whole business part of it.
Okay, he's the business part of it. He's the business.
Yeah.
All right.
So to say we had management, it really wasn't. It was called American Bands Management, but it was more of a booking agency. And then we told him about this great club in Ohio called the El Rosa Villa, and he got some of his bands like Stiff and Lillian Axe and Pantera. They ended up incorporating that into some of their more regional touring. So they had gone up there. And then that became, it kind of widened
Yes.
American bands, options for clubs.
Yeah.
So,
Grand
and that was a
Rapids,
thing.
Michigan.
That we, yeah, oh, Grand Rapids. Yeah, the night Molly Hatchet saved my life.
Yes.
It's people talk about a Spinal Tap moment,
Yeah,
and of course,
yeah.
it was a Spinal Tap era. I mean, every day was a Spinal Tap moment, but this was more of a Blues Brothers thing. We were, it was like Thanksgiving weekend. So a lot of people are home and they're deer hunting during the day, and then they go to the club at night, just want to drink with their buddies. And it was also one of these clubs that was like part bowling alley, part restaurant, part rock club. And it was like, well, you got to do these top 40 hits, oh yeah, we do all kinds of ZZ Top, and we'll do all that. And of course we didn't do any of that. And we played our first set, and everyone's like in camo from deer hunting.
So,
and
right out of
and
a Toby Keith video.
Yeah. And they saw us and they heard us and they were like, what the hell is this? They hated us. And they were just, you could just see them back at the bar seething, like, I paid money for this, this is terrible. And the club was mad because we kind of lied on, well, we very much lied on our set list. We're like, we did it's rock and roll. You got to do what you want to do. And so we're there backstage in between sets. And we're just thinking, like, what do we do? What do we know? How can we appease the natives? How can we feed their anger, or assuage their anger? And we're like, well, why don't we do Freebird? And it's like, no, if you mess up that slide part on Freebird, they'll kill you.
Yes.
You can't do that. That's sacrilege. Either you do it right or don't even. Yeah. So so I pick up my guitar backstage, and I'm going like, so I, Dreams I'll Never See by Molly Hatchet, and Joey knew the lyrics, Laine knew the chorus. He told him, oh, it's G to E minor. Oh, okay. And we just in 5 minutes threw it together and came out, and I just did that bam, and the people on the show looking into it, what the hell are they doing? Down, down, and they were just like going, well, okay. And Joey came, we nailed it. We actually played the song very, very well. And Joey just, put on my walking shoes. As long as we played that song every set, we were fine the whole rest of the week. So it was like the Blues Brothers with the
15-minute version of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, totally. It was extended, and
Yes. So, okay. So you went out to LA many times. Your big goal for the band, minus, you traveled all over the United States, but at the end, what you wanted to get was the record deal.
Well, we did, and LA was by far the place to do it. We kind of, being from the Midwest, we kind of thought about, well, what about New York? And it's like, we didn't really have quite that vibe. Plus, just didn't know anybody, and it just seemed like, just not our thing. But it was actually Mark Chatfield from Rosie and Gods Before Then, who suggested to my brother to try out Dallas. Because he was all like, well, I'll just move to LA. And he goes, no, you should try Dallas. Check out Dallas. My brother's like, I Dallas, what's there? Country music? I didn't know. And he was right. There was this one club called Mother Blues, kind of very popular, and there's some really good bands. And so really kind of on a tip from Chatfield, we ended up really home basing ourselves from Dallas. But the good thing is then from there, we were able to go to LA. So eventually the goal was to move there. And it was the Mecca. It was seemed like they were handing out record deals on street corners, and that whole scene, just all these bands, all these really good bands were coming out of LA. And I think we went there twice in '85. The second time was when we recorded our EP with Dana Strum. And then ended up really relocating there in '87 and made that our home base. But in LA, you can't play more than like once a month, even like, unless you go to Orange County or something like that, maybe you could throw in another gig, because the clubs wouldn't let you, because they didn't want you to get saturated. They want to anticipate the draw. So you'd promote for a month for just, 30 minutes on stage. It was really opposite of what we were used to. So we'd play our gig there, play the Whiskey or something. And then we'd load up the truck the next day and come back to Dallas and go to Houston and maybe Ohio and make money. And then by the time, do a 3-week tour or something, and then come back, and we'd just be getting ready for the next LA show. So we kind of reversed it from before, but we had that advantage. Of course, we had our
This
own
was
truck.
the 4-piece or the 3 or the 5-piece?
Well, the first time we went to LA, it was a 5-piece. And funny story, this is when Randy, he was kind of the odd man out. He wouldn't do his hair blonde. He was very reluctant to do that but it was a conscious thing. We all decided, okay, we're going to be blonde hair, or, this whole thing. Instead of having the blonde singer.
Every guy in the band was David Lee Roth.
Exactly. That's exactly. I wanted to look like David Lee Roth and play like Eddie Van Halen. That was what I wanted.
Yeah.
So we at least got the hair thing right. But Randy wouldn't do it. So he had like a couple blonde streaks kind of here. And it was like, that's close enough. That's his thing. Fine. Well, Carmen Appice was at our Troubadour show in early 85, like April or something. Yeah. And it wasn't 5 months later that he comes out with King Cobra. And
all those guys look like you.
It was 4 guys with bleached blonde hair, and the drummer with brown hair and a couple of blonde streaks. I mean, he totally lifted, which is fine. And I guess that's, I don't mind being ripped off or borrowed from. That means you're doing something right, I guess. But yeah, I think it was this band Icon from Phoenix that he basically absorbed.
I love Icon.
Yeah, it became the Schoolboys. I think Wexler and those guys were previous to that. We spent a lot of time in Phoenix, actually, because every time we'd go to LA, we would stop in Phoenix and play at this club called Rockers. And Surgical Steel was, I think, Jim Keeler was one of the remaining Icon Schoolboy, local Phoenix guys. But they were popular, and they had a really good draw at this club, Rockers. And and Rob Halford was like their manager because he lived there. And but what we would do is we'd play a couple weeks at Rockers, and then we'd take another week and just rehearse our LA set, and then from there go to LA. It's only a 6-hour drive, and then we'd be pumped and ready to go. And less time we'd have to spend on hotels and rehearsal in LA. We just took care of it in Phoenix. But yeah, Rob Halford sat in with us at Rockers one night. It was just great fun all over the country.
Yeah, he's singing to that. I remember watching an interview where he's singing through a crappy PA system, and it sounds absolutely perfect.
Oh yeah, no, the monitors were terrible at this. I mean, that's every band. Oh, the monitors suck.
Every place too. Yeah.
But they were really bad, and Joey's got a strong voice, so it was. We just whatever. We knew what we were doing. I'm sure it sounded fine out front. But yeah, Halford gets up there, and it's like, break it the what, and it's like, oh my god, and then it was just like, turn those things down. You couldn't hear him before, but it's really him. I mean, those pipes are, that's Halford all the way. That's just in his body. It's amazing.
So so what happens with Sweet Savage? So you're going for the record deal.
And then we did. And it was in between that first LA trip and the second LA trip, which was more in the summer, I think around June, when we went back there. That's when we lost Lance, and decided to just have me cover everything. I moved over to stage left, and it was more symmetrical. It made more sense. And by then I had a couple of years with the band, to really, I was really consistent. It's one thing of, maybe not as much of a shredder, although I could play. I was really a solid rhythm player as well. So we never really needed 2 guitars. And then, during the leads, you just bash the drums or open the hi-hat up, and it kind of fills in the sound. But yeah, we went back out there the second time, and that's when we hooked up with Dave Strum. I think Rick Fox even helped arrange that.
Steeler.
Yeah. And well, he was in this band called Sin after Steeler.
Okay.
In Yngwie, and Data Strum was recording them. So I don't know, it was just a couple connections. I think his girlfriend at the time, Charmaine King, she was a publicist, and she's doing stuff for us. But it was fun back then because it was fun the whole time. But like we saw Poison at the Roxy before they got CeCe, when they had their original guitar player. But to just see this whole evolution.
Yeah. They're a Harrisburg band.
It's what?
They were a Harrisburg band.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. They're
oh, that's right. That Mechanicsburg, Harrisburg.
25 minutes up the road.
Yeah.
Yeah. I worked.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know Brett's a big Steelers fan.
Yeah.
Let's go Steelers.
Yeah. So tell me about Poison a little bit. They did the same kind of thing that you were doing as far as marketing. Is that
Yeah, but they had it down. They had obviously they moved to LA before we did. So by the time we got there, they had already been there a while. And anywhere you would go, they had like a stencil. They must have had a stencil and some green spray paint, that bright green, and that Poison logo was all over town. Telephone poles, construction boards, on the sidewalk. You just, even if you didn't know what it was, you knew that logo and you knew that name. They were just masters.
1980s music business, LA? That's yeah.
It's all street level. And one thing I think, I'm just gonna throw this in, one thing that I don't think gets talked about enough, or maybe just people aren't even aware, is how much of a community we had. There's a lot of competition because everyone wants the record deal and everyone wants to be better and faster than the other guy, but there was so much cooperation. We were all in this together. It was like there were almost no grown-ups, and it was ruled by kids. And
Charlie
so
Brown existence.
yeah, like somebody who was, maybe in journalism school would do your press release, and somebody else who was wanting to be a designer, a clothing designer, would, because they wanted to get their clothes out there, so they'd make clothes for a bargain. Everybody had some role, and this street level promotion with all the flyers and getting out there was something new to us. We had radio spots, and we weren't even in the town. A lot of time, when we're on the road, you come into a town and they have to do all that stuff. That's their job. So we had a kind of a crash course in street promotion. But Poison were definitely the kings of it.
Yeah.
And
there was a lot of people I'm talking to, complete respect for what they did on a business end.
Yeah.
Whether you like their music or not is not the point. Because I don't hate it. I don't hate their music. I'm just saying that is not the thing that everybody. They did it right. They showed others how to do it too.
They worked very hard. Tammy Downs is another one that was. He wasn't really in a band then in '85. It wasn't until we came back in like late '86, early '87 that we ran into him again. And by then he had a band with a record deal. It was like crazy. Like, what are you doing? Wow, I guess that happened. And then he was, of course, involved with Ricky at the Cat House. So I went to the Cat. All the years I went to the Cat House, I never paid admission once. I really had an in right immediately with that, because there was this house, the Martell House, and it was a couple brother and sister from Detroit, and like everybody stayed there. The guys in Poison stayed there. Everybody partied there. Tammy was there. We were there. Nikki was there. It was just a lot of it was very focused and centralized, with kind of a handful of people. Once you were on the inside, it was kind of a small group, but there was such mutual respect and cooperation. Everybody wanted everybody to do well. Everybody wanted.
That's a scene.
Yeah, it was a real thing. We owned it. I mean, we felt like we were investing, we were contributing, and we were benefiting from it. And yeah, I haven't seen it since, anything like that. It's I hope on some level, maybe locals, maybe some local scenes or local music, towns have that somewhere, or will again. But it was it's like we owned the town. I mean, it was just young people with long hair and rock clothes. I mean, there was, like I said, there was almost no grown-ups.
Yeah. So when did this so you tried out for a record deal?
Well, here's what happened. Initially, what became the EP was just going to be a demo to shop, and we did shop it as a demo. We ended up later on printing it and selling it, and it did really well. But it was initially a demo, and I think Todd Weintraub, one of the Weintraub family, Jerry Weintraub, big producer and stuff, he was involved. I think he was one of Ricky Rackman's friends, and he was kind of managing us with his Alibi Artists. But through Dana Strum, we got offered this deal from Enigma. It was a little independent. Nobody really heard of them. They didn't really have anything going on.
Striper?
I don't know if they had them yet. Maybe. I don't know. This was 80, 85.
Okay, probably not then, yeah.
And they weren't part of Columbia or anything like that at the time. They were just an independent. And we got offered like, it was like a $30,000 budget for the record. And it was just, we had just done this demo and we didn't want to take the first thing that came along. Well, that's the deal that Poison ended up taking. And they certainly made something out of it.
Yeah.
I was kind of the mind, like, let's just take anything. Let's take something to get out there. And then we can always get a bigger record deal later. But I think what happened with Enigma, because of the success of Poison, that's when they got absorbed by Columbia. So then they had the major label distribution, but they had that kind of small label.
Indie boutique label.
Exactly, which you get a little more attention.
Sub Pop was the same thing with Geffen, years later.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like a boutique label.
And there's advantage to that because, I think you get a little bit of the hands-on, little one-to-one, that you're just not part of this machinery, and you can get lost in all that. But no regrets. I mean, we had other offers and there were other things that came about. But as it happened, after we moved back out there in 87, about 6 months after that's when Joey decided to leave. He and Randy, the drummer, left, and he started this kind of a solo thing. Part of it was that management company. They kind of split us, but you're still responsible for your own decisions. And Joey passed away just 2 weeks ago. I think 2 weeks ago today. Longtime friend I've known ever since I was 12. It's we can talk about that. It's a major devastation in my life. But I was glad I moved back to Texas, and as it happened, I was
with him in his last days, last months.
Last months, and definitely last days. I was probably over at his daughter's house 10 hours a day for that final week. But 2 weeks before then, he was over at my apartment and we were jamming on songs, so when he was in decline, but then when it finally happened, it was a very sharp drop off, which I'm okay with that. I think as opposed to long suffering and because he was
still lifelong friendships.
It was lifelong and lasted till the day he died. Absolutely. Yes. And
that is wonderful. And
it was
Eric Singer's right.
Yeah. And we had that. Whether it turned into millions of sales and records, it was certainly thousands, tens of thousands of record sales. And we played all over, and I was really surprised how many people, like names really knew us. I mean, Gene Simmons listened to our demo, and he said, I like everything about your band except your songs. Get some songs and come back to me. And it was honest, and he was right. But that's part of your growth too, is learning how to write better and get better songs. But it was a really dark time when Joey split. But we spent that whole summer rehearsing with this drummer, Walt Woodward, and we knew him from this band Americade. They had like their own independent release, and there was this really cool looking David Lee Roth looking guy with the long blonde hair and everything. Oh, that's got to be the singer. Well, ended up being the drummer, Walt. And he was in this band called Shark Island, and they reconfigured. So he lost his band about the time we lost our singer. And we rehearsed with him for about 3 months and did a couple auditions. We had Randy O from Odin sing with us a little while, and he went back to his Odin band and did his thing. But I think we really improved as a three-piece, the three musicians. And later that fall, Joey said, "Hey, made a mistake. Do you want to have me back?" And I'm like, "Wait a minute, it's not so fast here." So he came to rehearsal, and in 3 songs, we're like, "We got to do this." Everything forgiven. Let's move on. Past is behind us. Let's move on. We were even better than ever, and our draw increased. We were one of the last bands to get paid at the Whiskey and the Roxy. They were starting that pay to play. I don't know, pay to play, I think it's called. But we were still getting, still getting paid because we had already been playing, and they knew we could draw, and then they just pay to play the opening band. So they made a lot of money off us. But we had the Mark II version of the band did really well. But, and we had a really good gig with the Whiskey when both Brett and Cece sat in with us. We were actually at sound check, and they were cruising up Sunset in their Harleys, and they saw the marquee, and they came in and goes, you guys are playing? Well, shit. And they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll come back and we'll sit in later." And I'm like, "Yeah, right." Because this is when they were mega success by then, not like from before, but but we knew each other before all that. So there was a a kinship. And they came and they sat in with us. I think even Jamie Laine was there, and there's this really good picture of Janie, Brett, and Joey, and we just killed it that night. Jerry Miller from Metal Edge was there and took pictures. It was
I saw those pictures.
Yeah, it was a pretty magical gig,
You put yourself in the right spot. You've picked places that energy exists.
Yeah,
make things happen. To make things happen.
We did it.
Go ahead.
All the way, like in moving from the small town to Columbus, it had a really good music scene, and then moving to Dallas, which is an even bigger market.
That's a big part of it, though.
Scene. And then we go to LA. I mean, we kept moving. We kept, it's over here. It's over here. It's like fishing. You find the spot where they're biting on your line.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is So what happened then after?
There were a couple more offers. We had this company, Voss Records. Again, kind of a nothing as far as size, but they had some connections. And their claim to fame was they had the Bus Boys, which was, I think, the band in, was it Purple Rain, or it was like the backup band or something, or no, it was an Eddie Murphy movie, I think. So there's all
one song. As far as we're concerned, they had one song, but it was a cool one.
Yeah.
Boys are back in town, or no, that's Thin Lizzy.
Yeah, but it was a different version. Yeah. Boys are back.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, this is kind of a weird matchup, but okay.
Yeah.
And they paid for us to do a demo. I think it was in '88, and it was at Tito Jackson's home studio.
Wow.
And this wasn't long after this, maybe a year or two after that. Jackson 5 had their big reunion tour and everything, and so we're like, well, okay. So we loaded up everybody in the van, and we're driving around Encino trying to find this place, and we can't seem to find it. And finally, we asked somebody, like, where's the Jackson's house? What are we doing? Oh, okay, go down there, turn. Okay, we got it. And we pull in the driveway, and of course, then there's that big metal gate, and we push the button, said, we're here. We're here, Sweet Savage, we're here to, here for the Jacksons. And what are you doing here? And the guy comes out with a gun, and this is Michael's house. This isn't Tito's.
Oh God!
We went to the wrong Jackson's house.
Was it Dreamland or whatever?
It wasn't. It was his Encino house. It wasn't before he had the Neverland, but or maybe he had it, but he was still living there. And I think it was like the parents lived there too. This was 88, and they're like, get it. You got to get it. I said, well, can you at least tell us how to get to Tito's? And they're like, yeah, sure. So they gave us directions, and we go up there, and Tito had all those guitars, those kind of light up, crazy, Bootsy Collins looking guitars from the tour.
You hear him play guitar?
Huh?
Were you in the room with Tito and he's playing the guitar?
No,
I never heard the man play.
Yeah, I didn't either. I picked up one of his guitars when he wasn't looking.
Yeah.
Funny thing about that, though, he had quit smoking cigarettes, and I guess he had this thing on the wall, like how many days he had been smoke free. And as soon as his wife went upstairs, he was like, "Dude, you bum smoke." So I smoked cigarettes with him. Didn't play guitar with him, but we smoked cigarettes, and shot the breeze out there in the back. But we did like a 4-song down in one day. And only one of them did we go back and do overdubs. The other 3 songs it was basically live 3-piece, one take, no rhythm guitar, and then one pass with the vocals. And then we did this other one, Night is Calling, which was supposed to be for a soundtrack for a movie. It ended up not being used, but we more or less finished it. And it came out pretty good, but it was we were still moving forward. We were still recording, we're still doing this. And the Voss thing didn't really work out. They weren't really able to get a deal that was worthwhile for us. And then at some point, Joey again decided to leave. Part of that, he was starting a family. His girlfriend back in Texas got pregnant, and to his credit, he wanted to move back and be with her. But part of it too was, it was pretty brutal compared to the crazy road stories from the club days. To being in LA. It was kind of a cold, it didn't have that home feeling,
It's a place you go to.
Yeah.
It's usually not the place that you, that is home. It is the place you go to for a reason.
Yeah. And it just, it wasn't for everyone. It was very hard to, just to even get by day to day, just survival level was tough enough. So, There were a lot of reasons to not, but we were like, no, still, we got to stay in LA. This is where the record deals are. And,
Mhm.
and then by 89, you could tell there were signs of the strip slowing down and clubs were closing and, the crowd looked a little different. The bands were starting to look a little different. And, I can't blame Nirvana for, the demise of glam rock, but I think it kind of ate itself in a way. There were just so many bands and they were all kind of doing the same thing. I think by then we were one of the older bands that had been veterans that had been around for a while. And though I think we were very much in the right place at the right time, 85, 86, 87, by 89, it was, I think the time.
If it didn't happen, it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, I think Warrant was probably one of the last bands to get signed that really did something. There was still enough room. There's still at least 2 or 3 years left where they could do Cherry Pie and it still worked. They couldn't have done that in 1984 or 1994.
Yes.
But I think 90 or 91 when it came out that was kind of really the last
hurrah.
Hurrah. And, to their credit, they did it great. I mean, James was a great songwriter, great singer. The band was awesome. I saw them a bunch of times, just playing clubs before they got a deal.
Great writer, Janie.
Yeah. He did a lot of stuff too after Warren. He kept on working. I mean, he was doing stuff you'll probably never know about, but definitely writing. Always a good writer.
Creative. Okay, so after Sweet Savage, what did you get involved in?
Well, I was devastated. It was like as if part of my life was taken away, or actually my life was taken away. Maybe not my physical body life, but my dream, my goal. And it was everything we had worked towards. We had been playing together for 10 years. We were like a long time band, on and off. I mean, in the early days, but probably at least 5 or 6 years as the Sweet Savage unit. And it was kind of everything I had known. It was everything I wanted to do. And I didn't want to just do it with somebody else. I auditioned for a couple of bands. I think it was Lizzie Borden. It got down to 2 people and I knew my heart wasn't in it. And, they got the right guy, which wasn't me. But I hadn't, really, I was only in like 1 or 2 bands since high school before Sweet Savage that, everything I had written was for Joey's voice. Everything I'd ever done was with my brother on stage. Even if it was a national act that was going to tour and maybe make a little bit of money, I wasn't, why would I join somebody else? It was going to be less, even if it was bigger in some level, it would have been less personal for me than what I already would have been a step down. Except for Poison. When CeCe left Poison, I probably would have been the guy, a go-to guy for that. And I think I was, but I was in the hospital at the time with a broken back. So that didn't happen.
So let's go through that. Okay. So after Sweet Savage, when did you start flying?
90, I think 1990.
Well, this was after?
This was after. I think we played our last show in 89.
Okay.
Through a friend of a friend, I got involved with screenwriting in Hollywood because, I kind of wanted to do something completely different because, like I said, the scene wasn't happening anymore. And I didn't want to just join somebody else's band because that was so unfulfilling that I just wanted to try something else, maybe distance myself from that, to ease the pain because I was crushed. And I was working in Santa Monica and the little airport was there. And I'm like, like my dad growing up he was a college professor, but he also taught students how to fly on the weekends. So I was little planes at a little airport. I was pretty familiar with that, although it had been 20 years since or 15 years at least since I'd been in a little airplane. I thought, well, here's an opportunity. And I sold my Marshalls and, kept the good guitars, but to pay for flying lessons. And I just wanted to, I just wanted to get above it all, just go up in the sky and, everything that was so important and so frustrating on the ground really didn't apply. And didn't have any designs on a career, being a pilot or anything. Just something I wanted to do, and it was an accomplishment. And by the time I had achieved that, it was 91, like spring of 91, and yeah, in May, I was still flying. I kind of didn't know what I was going to do next. And some of my pilot friends were getting together for this air show. And oh, yeah, you should come. Oh, you should fly. Oh, really? I did the ribbon cutting contest. Basically, they drop a streamer from another plane, and then you come at it and hit it with your wing and cut it. It's called a ribbon cutting contest. It's actually a roll of toilet paper that
Yeah.
it makes a long streamer so it doesn't hurt the plane. And then you have up until about 1,000 above the ground, 1,000 feet above the ground. And that's like your hard deck where you don't, the contest is over by then. You have to make your last cut by then. And I was probably in over my head. I was a relatively young pilot as far as hours and experience go. And wasn't that I was doing anything really crazy, but about 4 or 5 things went wrong at the same time. I had a high angle of attack and low air speed, and there was a wind shear, and the plane had an center of gravity condition, and it was kind of the perfect storm for something to go wrong, and it did. And once I figured it out that, oh my gosh, I'm in a deep stall, I couldn't get the nose back down to scoop out. It just kind of mushed in, and called a mayday on the radio. And it was just this surreal feeling, like you only call a mayday when you're cooked. I mean, when that's usually the last thing anybody hears.
Survived.
Yeah, I did. And I was conscious the whole way down. It's a bizarre spiritual experience in the air in between mayday and crunch. Saw a vision, heard a voice. It was just, I felt like I made a choice to live. Actually, the voice asked me if I wanted to live or die.
Yeah.
Can't explain it. Can't disprove it though, because it really happened to me.
Yes.
As much as anything else happened that day. It was very much real. And I felt like, stick around for another chance at life. And that's been 30 years in the past now.
Yeah.
No regrets. I mean, I can still play. I mean, later on I got in other bands and even toured in Japan that I never got to do in Sweet Savage.
So this happens, and it's funny how things work out. And I don't know that you could ever have written this script, but your life, Sweet Savage, was the beginning of your adulthood. Your life went on a completely other cool path.
Yeah, it's almost like a past life.
Sweet Savage years ago. I like how you liken it to the hero's journey with Joseph Campbell.
Yeah,
you're talking about undergoing the transformation and facing the challenge, and then you got your first hero's journey was with Sweet Savage.
Yeah,
that was
for sure. I mean,
that was a. We're not gonna overthink this. We're just gonna jump into it and do it.
Yeah.
But then you're forced into this. Something happened to you, and what am I going to do with the rest of my life, or what am I going to do with my life, and make it so you ended up after you went going back to college.
Yeah, again, something I hadn't done before.
Completely new.
Because I mean, really, I went from high school to working a job at a factory and buying guitar gear and playing in a local band, places like the El Rosa in Columbus, to Sweet Savage. I mean, that was, really my trajectory there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought, in a way, I thought my life was over.
Very quick trajectory. I've said this to you privately.
Yeah.
That's not how it happens. It's usually not that scary quick.
Yeah.
Because
that's why I thought it would never end. I thought it would just keep on going, you know, and I like to think in some alternate universe or something that there is a Sweet Savage that went on. But, looking back, it's kind of nice too, because the band was an 80s band and it lived and died in the 80s when the 80s lived and died. It died with the 80s,
yes.
1989.
You went to Arizona State and got a bachelor's of communications.
Yeah.
And then one of your this is all why you're trying to reinvent. I don't know if did you think in terms of reinventing yourself?
Well, I had cut my hair off pretty much after, when I was flying and everything, but so I kind of reinvented myself or resurrected myself.
Okay.
And I grew my hair back out. And I knew I was doing some film things in LA when I was learning to fly. But I got, there wasn't really film school at Arizona State, but there was enough classes I could sort of cobble together, making some student shorts.
Yeah.
And that's when I did this short Walk This Way, kind of a personal documentary.
That was absolutely wonderful.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. It was fun to do, and just to a really creative
Making
outlet
sense,
for me.
making sense out of what life had become, and trying to, okay, what is the next thing in line? Where is this taking me? And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah. So the
Well, it's
walk
a
is,
way of totally accepting it and totally owning
mm-hmm,
where I was. When you
yeah.
put yourself out, I'm speaking, I'm on film talking about this. And I was also doing stand up or sit down
I was gonna
comedy,
say, yeah,
which actually I was kind of getting some traction in that as well. Of course, a lot of my shtick was, wheelchair jokes and
yeah,
couldn't cross the street. The sign said don't walk. So I
yeah.
didn't, things like that. But one of the funny things though about the plane crash, and I ended up using it in the comedy as well, the 27 Club, where a lot of famous musicians die when they're 27.
Yeah, yeah,
A lot of other famous musicians die in plane crashes, Otis Redding, Patsy Cline,
yeah, yeah.
Skinner, Steve Ray
Randy
Vaughan.
Rhodes.
Yeah, Randy Rose. I mean, it's probably more so died in plane crashes than at age 27. Well, I had my 27th birthday in the hospital with a broken back from a plane crash.
And you lived.
And I lived, yeah. So the joke is that I wasn't famous enough, that I
Yeah, yeah,
just
okay.
broke my back. I
Yes,
just, I'm just in a wheelchair now, but I didn't die because I wasn't popular enough or something.
yes.
I don't know. So yeah, it's been really an incredible journey, and here I am again. It almost seems like I'm ready to do another restart or another revamp, or I got a
So
whole
you get
nother
to,
chapter left in me for sure, and
yeah,
I'm
so
ready to go.
Arizona State, and then you got your master's like 10 years later
Yeah,
in transformational psychology.
Yeah, kind of the spiritual or really depth
Inner.
psychology stuff, like Jungian. Again, the hero's journey. That's all very much in that same
Yes.
realm of.
So we're tribe in the Joseph Campbell stuff.
Yeah, nice.
He
Right
changed
on.
my life for a lot of reasons, not,
Uh-huh.
but okay, uh so that in itself is like all the stuff that has come from that. I don't know. I see. I don't. I can't put myself in your shoes, but I think, wow, what a cool turnaround that that, that you've done.
Well,
So,
it's completely unexpected, and thank you for saying. But yeah, I just kind of went with it, and um, like I said, there's still more to go. But
mhm,
kind of a funny thing, I got in this band. What was it, in '06, '07?
mhm.
Kotak, and there's a guy who knew James Kotak, the
Was it
drummer.
Scorpions drummer?
Yeah, he was in Scorpions for like 10 or 11 years or something.
Kingdom Come.
Kingdom Come before that. But before that, he was in a band from Louisville, Kentucky called Buster Brown. And they would play the Alrosa like in '83. So I met him then, before Sweet Savage, before Texas, before
Yeah.
LA and all this stuff. And we'd hung out. And then I moved to Texas, and Buster Brown got on that same circuit. So I ran into him in Fort Worth about 2 years later. Oh, how's it going, man? Oh yeah, cool. And then I got to LA when we moved out there in '87. I ran into him again, and they were recording the Kingdom Come. So I went in his car and he was playing some roughs, from the studio, and it's like big Zeppelin drums and all this everything. So we remained really close friends,
Mhm.
and Sweet Savage, in the '80s had played several gigs at Gazzari's with on the bill with Hardly Dangerous. It was Tommy Ray on vocals, and Athena, the drummer, Tommy Lee's sister,
Yeah, I was gonna say.
on drums. So I knew both of them probably before they met each other. Then they ended up getting married,
Okay.
and they had this side gig called Kotak, where James would sing,
Yeah.
and she played drums.
Okay.
So I joined up with them, and we're playing, and went to Mexico and New York and played, and then we went to Japan because Scorpions was already in Japan, and since James and Athena were already there, like just on the
Scorpions.
band,
Yeah.
Scorpions ticket, we just flew the other, me and the bass player just flew out there, and hooked up with them, and we stayed maybe about 2 weeks and did some local gigs there. Well, funny thing, the last gig we played in Tokyo, this guy came up to me afterwards, and because of Kotak, there was some autograph signing because being Japan, a lot of people love Scorpions. I do,
Mhm.
and I was kind of riding along with that, and this guy pulled out the EP from 1985, and on vinyl. Yeah,
I have it on vinyl.
and
It's
and
upstairs. Yeah.
well, people in Tokyo are not pack rats. There's nowhere to pack
Yeah.
it. It's everything is Tetris in, everything's small, everything's miniaturized. And so they don't like carry on a bunch of stuff. So for him to have this like 20 years later, and he must have found out that the guitar player for the Kotak band was the guy that used to be in Sweet Savage that somehow got out in a press release or something, because he came there to see me. And so afterwards, here I am 20 years later, never been to Tokyo before. Sweet Savage didn't get to Tokyo, although the album sold a little bit, and Burn Magazine did some articles. So here I am signing, the Sweet Savage record, and that's the kind of the Spinal Tap moment where it's like, after all these years, somebody remembered there was one autograph from one person, and Sweet Savage was, still popular. We're still big in Japan, I guess.
In York, PA. Spiders and Snakes.
Oh, that was that was my most recent band before I went back out here to Dallas. Lizzie Gray. Well, I had in that there was this movie, Decline of Western Civilization Part 2, the metal years.
That's how I know Lizzie Gray.
Yeah. Well,
that's how the world knows Lizzie Gray.
Well, London and Lizzie, they had probably more screen time than anybody. It wasn't as memorable as maybe Chris Holmes, but there was a lot of, they were kind of featured heavily in that. And I don't know when it was like in the 90s. I ended up hooking up with Timmy Asui, who was playing drums with Lizzie. He didn't join London until maybe 89. So it would have been after Decline. But he, we were friends, we hooked up and, see each other's bands or whatever, jamming around. And that's how I got to know Lizzie, through him. But it wasn't until many, many years later, it was like 2011 or 2012, that we hooked up, and I guess they needed a guitar player, friend of a friend. I think it was Betsy Bitch, as a matter of fact, from Bitch, mutual friend, said, hey, get a hold of Timmy, they're looking for a drummer. And he called me, and I think I just joined the band. I don't think I auditioned. And then I was with them for, 7 years until Lizzie died. He ended up passing away of Parkinson's. But part of the reasons why I was brought on was that it was getting harder for Lizzie to play guitar, like leads. Leads were a little bit hard for him. He's a really good player, really good songwriter. My gosh, he's got a huge catalog. But he could still play rhythm and sing. So fine. So I play leads. Then it was a little bit harder for him to play the rhythm. So he just put the guitar down and he would sing, and I took over all the guitar stuff. Then he would be sitting on a stool. It was kind of Parkinson's. It was kind of a long decline, but he kept it going all the way to the end. I mean, I think he even played a gig within months of, before he passed. So just do it all the way. But it was a good experience. And I was really glad that Nikki Sixx and Lizzie got to connect about a year before he passed.
Because were they good with each other?
Well, I don't know if there's any like bad blood or something, but there was a distance, and I think time, played a factor. They'd been so long because, London was Nikki Sixx's first band.
Late 70s, early 80s, before Motley Crue.
Yeah, before Motley Crue, and actually that song, Public Enemy #1, Lizzie Gray wrote that. It ended up being on the first Motley Crue record, but we would play it at clubs, and people would be like, "What are you playing a Motley Crue song for?" And it's like, Lizzie wrote it. It's not a Motley Crue song. Motley Crue covered it, but it was a London song. So the history there, playing the Starwood and all these clubs, like before I got to LA, that late 70s, early 80s was great to hear a lot of the stories, and certainly well respected. But boy, that band London. I mean, Nigel Benjamin, who went on to Mott the Hoople. Izzy Stradlin was in it. Fred Corey was in it. It was almost like if you got in London for any length of time, you ended up having a pretty good career. It was
college.
Who except for Lizzie.
As a singer, was it a guy from Sweet?
Nader DePriest. No, it wasn't that guy. Different. He was actually from Mexico City, but he still has the name London. Nader does.
No, I'm talking about you remember there was an old band.
Oh, right. There was in London. Yeah.
Not like they had a singer back before Nikki Sixx, I think. That it was like Sweet Singer, or I don't know if it wasn't one. I forget who it was. but they
Yeah,
had some really, really old, like 70s singer that
yeah,
sang with them. Yeah,
yeah.
so
It was just
that's like the
a
LA
voice.
College of rock star.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe that'll work out in my favor
I'll do my
too.
homework. I'll do my
Yeah,
homework.
yeah. So yeah, just to be part of that and that history
That's
but yeah, if there
wonderful.
was any bad blood between Nikki and Lizzie, they definitely made it up. It was funny because Nikki actually got a hold of me. I tweeted out something about Lizzie being sick, is when he kind of really wanted to be public with it, and I don't know, maybe I hashtag Nikki or something. I don't know, because we was talking about the music, and he sent me a tweet and said, DM me. I'm like, okay. And then he calls me because Lizzie was right there, and I handed the phone over, and that kind of got that going again,
Yeah.
which I was just really, it's just great. It's great that they were able to
Patch things up.
meet their kid, the
Yeah.
kids met their kids, and
Yes. That's wonderful.
got to be there. So, yeah, just a great guy. Lizzie, and he was so good at that kind of, almost like T-Rexy kind of early wave of glam.
Yeah.
That very, very pop glam stuff. He was just so good at that. Very natural sensibilities when it came to his writing, and just a great guy. So it was really an honor to play with him
That is wonderful.
and get to know him.
What
Yeah,
do you, so what are you doing now? You've moved back to Dallas.
yeah.
Okay. And
Never say
then,
never, right? I didn't think
well,
that would
no,
happen.
yeah, as I said, it's like reinvention again.
Yeah. Well, it just happened with the pandemic and stuff like that, and it was getting really weird in LA. Actually, it was, you couldn't play, and it wasn't what it was. I mean, of course, nothing ever is after a while, but uh, it almost got to be like, wait, why am I still in LA? What am I doing here?
Yeah.
It's hard to live, and it's kind of dirty and all this stuff, and friends and talking, and it just kind of slipped in. This Dallas move came up very quickly, and when it did, of course, the first person I'm going to talk to was Joey St. Jones, my childhood friend,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we hooked up, and he was starting to get back in the hospital a little bit more, and the cancer was coming back, and we had this great gig in November at this place called Trees, it's kind of the go-to place, and he did great. It was incredible that, like, Sweet Savage may have been his kind of biggest thing and kind of his first thing,
Yeah.
but he did a lot of other stuff in the years since.
He was the Shock 2 and the
Shock 2, Glory Hounds. He had a
yeah,
Crabtree band. And each
Pal
one,
Joey and
yeah. And each time he had a band, or he'd do a record, and it was really, Joey has such a distinct voice. He could sing anything, to me anyway, because I know him. Oh, that's Joey. I could pick it out.
mhm.
But he had a lot of diversity in his bands, and the songs, the writing. And we did this gig in November that was, in a way, kind of a send off for Joey, because everyone knew he was sick by then. And but he pulled it together, and he must have done 25 songs. There were like 4 or 5 songs for each mini set. So it was basically a retrospective of his whole career.
Mhm.
And people flew in, and honestly, a lot of us were kind of like, what's he going to do? Maybe 2 or 3 songs. And we were trying to get, bring people like Chad Stewart, who now he plays drums for Faster Pussycat, but he's from Columbus. We do it for years. That, like, who can sing this stuff if Joey chokes or something, or just can't do it, or passes
Yeah.
out or whatever. I mean, we were kind of nervous, and he pulled it
Pulled it off.
together, and
Yeah.
you would not have known. I mean, people that close knew him, yeah, sure, but I mean, I played worse gigs with him when we were in our 20s, just because we're all messed up on drugs or something,
Yeah.
But it was miraculous. Not to use that word loosely, but people flew in, and it was great for the audience. It was like a reunion. Everyone got to see each other all at once
Mhm.
in one club, and going through all
So the whole Sweet Savage got back together and played?
well, my brother Laine didn't come. It was, like I said, it was a little sketchy on whether, and this thing came together very quickly. It was only about 8 days notice from when it got booked. And Joey was over at my apartment, and he got a call from Christian Baird and said, "Oh yeah, we're going to do this show." And Joey's like, "Doing a show? What?" I'm like, "Well, let's get on it. Let's start rehearsing." So there really wasn't enough time for Laine to come out and get a ticket and everything.
Yeah.
and really didn't know what it was going to be like. Randy happened to be in the audience. He came up from Houston to just to watch, and I
Yeah.
think somebody asked him if he wanted to sit in. He was like, "Nah, I haven't played drums in a while, and back hurts and all this stuff." Well, when it's our turn to play the Sweet Savage-ish version, just basically me and Joey, I'm plugging in, getting my line check, and there's somebody, I forget why, there's somebody comes up to me and goes, "Oh, Randy's going to sit in," and I'm like, that's the first I heard about it. So it turned around, and then there he is, and he did On the Rocks, and he did great. And it was just, and now, of course, after the fact, and I was like, dang, I should have showed up.
Yeah.
But who knew it was going to happen? But it was, and it was just, his daughter was there. Joey just really, I mean, who gets to play your farewell gig? You know what I mean? It was almost like a tribute, but he got to roast himself. He got to send himself
And he was
off.
directing the whole thing.
He did it his way all the way to the end.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
well, he did a thing up in Columbus. He played, and it was very low key, but he just got together with friends up there before he knew it was what was inevitable.
Yeah,
And, yeah.
So as far as what I'm going to do next,
he is a light.
Yeah, and he really shined his light on a lot of people. It was, I know it's always tragic when somebody passes, but you do get to see really the range of people whose lives he affected and impacted very positively. There's hundreds of people maybe who probably looked up at Joey as anybody else would.
Probably more than that.
Yeah. But I mean, of course, thousands and thousands of people know him. I know who he is, but really, deeply touched the lives of people that really made that he was maybe an inspiration for them to get their life together, or maybe take a chance and do something crazy instead of holding back. Like he was always very supportive of everybody, always had a nice thing to say, very encouraging. Just a very giving, caring person. That's who I knew in high school. And
that's wonderful.
Played in a band, and he was that way until, I mean, he's basically on his deathbed, and he just, didn't want, people to see him like that. So it was only just a couple of us that were kind of hanging around at the end, and, just always looking out for everyone else. That's how he lived his life, total integrity. And I'm proud to have known him and has been his friend. And Rod, I don't think it ends here. I mean,
it doesn't.
There's songs. He has such a catalog. Even just the stuff he did in Sweet Savage, there was a bunch of them that we didn't really get to record. We'd whip them up, the night before in the hotel and run through it at sound check, and then just play it live that night, without recording, because we were always touring. But to go back and maybe re-record some stuff, unfortunately, we'd have to have somebody else sing because Joey can't do it now. But as far as just a tribute, and or maybe take those songs and make something else, or give them to a young band who's up and coming that needs some good rock songs. It's kind of like new old stock. They've been
what's
preserved.
Old becomes new again.
It is, yeah. And
what's old becomes new again.
A lot of people are really interested in that whole 80s scene in LA, and just in the music and the fashion, the style, the vibe. There's some bands like Dirty Honey, they're kind of doing a rock thing. And, Greta Van Fleet's doing a little bit of a Zepp thing, but, I think there's a real hunger for it. And there's a whole generation of people that weren't even born then, or maybe were born in the late 80s, that have like this nostalgic outlook, or looking back on something that they weren't even there for. And it's
let's be honest, it was a
cool what's happened since.
No, I'm just saying it was a cool time to grow up. It was a cool time to experience. It was fun, even though as somebody once says, the rock star, what did you say? The rock star is that's not the person you want to role models, or not role models, but it was absolutely a fun time to grow up. And that's, I'm being funny, but
it really was. I mean, back then, nobody should have followed me as a role model in this, but if you wanted to have fun, we were the ones to hang out with, for sure. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. But thank you so much. More on your adventure, and that this ongoing, the your ongoing journey. This is cool.
I feel like I'm in a really good spot now. Like I said, I don't know what's next. I mean, I'm obviously it'll be playing rock guitar, but
Mhm.
we'll just see where it goes.
What else are you doing, like with your wellness and your spiritual growth and that? Maybe intertwine the music and
Yeah, like remember the Beatles would go see Maharishi or like a
right.
guru or something like that. Maybe I can sort of blend them
You
together.
just gotta
I can
grow a
be,
beard and paint it purple.
no, you already got that down, so I don't want to
Yeah,
take your
you don't want to
take your
steal my vibe.
trademark.
All righty.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you
Well,
so
thank you,
much.
Rob, for having me. This has been a just great time hanging out with you and talking and
Yeah.
tell the old stories. And of course, there's always more to tell, but yeah.
We can.
Okay.
It'll be around too.
All right.
Alrighty.
It's
Thanks.
equal.
Thanks so much. Thank you.
Okay, Rob. Take care.
We love Guitar Nerds. Thank you. Until next time.